When you hear the word communication, you probably think of speaking. However, 60 to 65% of our interpersonal communication occurs nonverbally. Nonverbals are all forms of communication except the spoken word. They advertise what we are thinking through our physical gestures, facial expressions, and cues that accompany voice. What you do, how you look, and the sound of your voice can send nonverbal messages that are even more powerful than your words. Today we will talk about the functions, characteristics, and categories of nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication serves three functions. One of those functions is to reinforce our verbal messages. 65 to 93% of the time, our nonverbals reinforce our verbal messages. We point to show someone where to put something. We smile when we are happy, and we glare at someone we dislike. But sometimes we use nonverbals to contradict our verbal messages. When this occurs, receivers will believe the nonverbal messages over the verbal ones, which can lead to confusion. Sometimes our contradictory messages are unintentional, like when someone asks how you like the meatloaf, and you say it's great, but your face says something different. Other times we intend to send contradictory messages. An example of this is when you tell your friend that they are the worst friend ever, but you are smiling because you are just kidding around. Another function of nonverbals is when they substitute for verbal expressions. You're familiar with nodding for yes and shaking your head as a way of answering without words. Now let's talk about some of the characteristics of our nonverbal communication. This type of communication is subconscious, contextual, cultural, and ambiguous. Take a moment to look at this picture. Describe what is occurring. What did you see that made you reach your decision? But make sure you are not using emotions in your answers. Emotions are interpretations of nonverbal observances. So, what did you see to reach your interpretation? Most nonverbal messages are sent and received at the subconscious level. Sometimes we consciously process the nonverbals in our interpretation, but it takes practice to pull this information to the forefront of our thoughts. Often we will make statements like, "I don't trust my friend's new love interest." If someone asks why, we just have to admit that it's a feeling we have. But those feelings are based on nonverbal cues that you are subconsciously picking up. Some part of your mind noticed their lack of eye contact, negative body posture, and etc. If we can learn to move more of that processing to the conscious level, we increase the accuracy of our interpretations of all messages. Nonverbal messages are also contextual. This is one of the reasons that conscious processing is important. Competent communicators take circumstances into account before making judgments. Your interpretation of this man's actions may change when you learn that he just left his boss's office and was fired. Or he got a raise. Maybe he's at a dance or sees a spider. Generally, we think of a touch, a glance, or a smile as a positive, and see avoiding eye contact, a frown, or folded arms as a negative signal. However, if you have siblings and you saw them smiling when you walk in, there's a chance that that smile is at your expense. Your parents found out something and now you are in trouble, and they are so going to enjoy watching you get in trouble. On the other hand, someone frowning may be concentrating, and it has nothing to do with their mood. Folded arms can indicate that someone is upset, but it can also indicate that someone is cold. You have to consider more than the nonverbal in your interpretation. If the room is 92 degrees, it's unlikely that they are cold. The more cues that point to the same outcome, the more likely that your interpretation is correct. One nonverbal alone is generally not enough. Nonverbal communication is also cultural. A signal in one culture may be entirely different in another culture. Because of this, the U.S. State Department has experts to advise government employees traveling overseas. But that doesn't prevent all mishaps. It became a diplomatic crisis when the governor of New Mexico was meeting with Saddam Hussein prior to the Iraq War. The governor crossed his legs and insulted Hussein by positioning his legs so that the bottom of his shoe was visible to Hussein. Showing the bottom of the shoe to someone is insulting in Middle Eastern cultures. And this explains the confusions Americans experienced when they saw people hitting Hussein's pictures and statues with their shoes. One of the biggest issues with nonverbal cues is that they are ambiguous. This means that they have no meaning except what a person assigns. They also may last for only a split second. These two issues mean that the nonverbal may be unnoticed or misinterpreted. If you make a derogatory statement but wink to show you are joking, the receiver may blink at the same time you wink. And if they miss that cue that indicates you are joking, they will believe your derogatory words. Now that you know the characteristics, let's discuss the three categories of nonverbal communication: voice, kinesics, and environment. Voice has four aspects: pitch, volume, tone, and duration. Pitch is one aspect that closely ties to emotion. It is how high or low the voice is on a musical scale. High pitch can indicate stress, fear, tension, excitement, or youth. A medium voice is usually perceived as being calm and confident, and a low pitch denotes sadness, tenderness, or concern. Low pitches are pleasant to listen to, but prolonged use will lull your listeners to sleep. If you primarily use the same pitch, you are monotone, and that is generally considered to be very ineffective. Volume is how loud or soft the voice is. Remember that the speaker is responsible for being heard. If people cannot hear your message, you cannot tell them to listen louder. You have to speak louder. But being too loud will cause you to come across as being overbearing or rude. Too soft makes you appear shy or incompetent. One way to know if your volume is appropriate is to use your listener's body position. People will tend to lean forward if they are having trouble hearing you, and lean back if you are too loud. But this is where ambiguity comes in. They will also lean toward you if they are interested in what you are saying, and lean away if they disagree. So, how do you know which it is? You have to look for other clues. If they are smiling, they are not likely disagreeing. But if they lean back with their arms crossed, disagreement is more likely. Another characteristic of voice is tone. This is probably the hardest to define. It is the vocal quality, which can be mellow, meek, or harsh. It comes from the resonance produced by how deeply people breathe and use of the diaphragm to support the airflow. Think of tone like bells. Some sound cheaper and of poorer quality. Others sound rich, resonant, and of high quality. Finally, we have duration, or the rate at which you speak. If you speak quickly, it often gives the impression that this part of your message is less important and it's harder to follow. If you speak slowly, that part of your message seems more important and people pay greater attention. However, if you speak slowly for prolonged periods, people will lose interest in what you are saying. So variety is best. By speeding up at the easier parts to comprehend and slowing down on more complicated portions, you hold interest. If we input you speaking into a computer program that analyzes the pitch and rate of speaking, it can produce a song with note values and pitches that can be played on a piano. Like music, you want a variety of notes, volume, and speed to maintain the interest of the listener. Our final voice subtype will be cues that accompany voice, vocalizations, and pause and silence. These are considered nonverbals because they are not spoken words, even if vocalizations are produced with the mouth and are audible. Vocalizations are sounds like laughter, sighs, whines, throat clearings, or fillers, which is saying or ah. If vocalizations are overused, they will clutter your message. Another cue is pauses and silences. Pauses are short breaks, and silences are longer breaks, which can create stress. Pauses can be useful by the sender to set off thoughts, develop curiosity or suspense in the listener, raise questions, or create dramatic effect. Pauses can also be used by the receivers to demonstrate a willingness to listen, express approval, disapproval, or apathy. It can indicate respect and courtesy, or display a tense emotion. Kinesics is our second category of nonverbals. It has a number of effects on our communication efficiency. Kinesics is the use of body and facial expressions in communication. Your personal appearance is part of kinetic nonverbals. Your appearance often creates the first impression, and it can block communication if the receivers find it distracting. Your posture and movement also send messages about you. If your posture is straight and relaxed, you look confident. Too loose makes you look like you are lazy, and too stiff makes you appear uncomfortable. This is even true for the way you walk and the length of your stride. Moderate strides make you appear confident and secure. If your stride is too long, you may appear aggressive, but small strides make you appear timid. This is much like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Not too much, not too little, just right. Answer this question. If you want to know what is really going on with a person, where do you look for the strongest clue? Chances are the majority of you said the face, or more specifically, the eyes. You could not be farther from the truth. Move all the way down the body. The most honest part of a person's body is the feet. You were taught to control your facial expressions, but few people pay attention to the messages that their feet transmit. Body and feet position do send a signal. If you are turned toward someone, that indicates interest. Turned away indicates a desire to leave. If these are congruent, you're sending the same signal. Everything is good. But what if they contradict each other? The body faces you, but the feet are turned away. Believe the feet. They are more reliable. Facial expressions are another form of kinesics. Facial expressions can be broken down into several categories: eyebrows, lips, smiles, and eye contact. The position of eyebrows sends messages that are typical of most body positions. Down is usually a negative, neutral is comfortable, and raised is excitement or surprise. However, a person can have the furrowed brow with down-turned eyebrows if they are concentrating. Lips are another signal. Lip compressions, when lips tighten or thin, like in this picture, or the lips virtually disappear, are a universal sign of stress, meaning that it transcends age and culture. Lip pursing, fish lips, nearly always signals disagreement or indicates that they have another idea. Relaxed lips transmit comfort, and open lips usually accompany excitement. But even smiles have their own language. There are over 50 different types of smiles. So, how can you tell if a smile is genuine? Look at the outer corners of the eyes. In a fake smile, the corners of the mouth move toward the ears. A person who chooses to smile employs the risorius muscle, one that runs along the cheek, but it creates no crinkle at the outer corners of the eyes. In a genuine smile, they employ two muscles. The zygomaticus major stretches from the corner of the mouth to the cheekbone, and the orbiculus oculi muscle that surrounds the eye. This causes the muscles of the mouth to move toward the eyes, creating eye crinkles. Babies that are only weeks old will use the zygomatic smile with their mothers and use the risorius for other people. Our last facial expression is eye contact. This is a highly cultural-based clue. Direct eye contact in the American culture is considered respectful and honest. However, in many cultures, including the Asian culture, direct eye contact is seen as defiant and confrontational. Indirect eye contact in the American culture suggests that you are hiding something, but eye avoidance in Asian countries is considered respectful and courteous. Our last category is environmental, which has three subcategories: spatial or distance, haptic, touch, and chronemic or time. Spatial circles come in four distances. Unfortunately, this is something our world is learning more about. People who are extremely important to you can be touching you or up to 18 inches with comfort. For people you know well, we generally prefer that they remain 18 to 24 inches apart from us. Social distance is the term with which nearly everyone is now familiar. It is considered to be 4 to 12 feet. This is the distance that makes most people comfortable around people with whom we are acquainted, but with whom we do not closely associate. Our greatest spatial distance is public, at 25 to 12 feet. Public distance is the space most preferred between ourselves and strangers, but even these are cultural. Americans tend to have larger spatial bubbles than Europeans, and people in the eastern regions of the United States generally have smaller bubbles than people from the southwest regions. Just as our spatial distances have recently changed, so has our haptic touch. Previously, a firm handshake was important in business. Currently, we are reducing any physical contact. But in the event that we return to normal business practice, you need to know how to conduct an appropriate handshake. The handshake should have the webbing between your thumb and index finger in contact with the web on their hand. Do not just hold the fingers. Next, keep your hand vertical. Do not turn your hand so that yours is on top, nor let them turn so that their hand is on top of yours. Turning is a move that establishes dominance. And regardless of gender, have a firm handshake. The last hint, keep your index finger free to move to the tendon on their wrist. This is especially helpful if you shake hands with someone that wants to intimidate you by crushing your hand in the handshake. And size doesn't matter, placement does. I have surprised many an athlete with this move when I taught high school. The last environmental cue we will discuss is time. How we use our time reflects our priorities. All of us have the same time, but not the same talent or physical ability. We also have mandated slices of time, such as sleep and work. How we spend our flexible time indicates our priorities. We find time to do that which we find most important and put off that which is less important to us. Arrival times for appointments or dates also send nonverbal signals. 15 minutes early is the standard business practice. Showing up too early makes you appear desperate, while arriving too late makes it appear that your appointment was unimportant, or that your time is more valuable than theirs. The next time you're watching television, begin observing what the actors do to make you believe their characters. It's not their words, but their nonverbals that make them believable. As you talk with others, consciously process why you believe or do not believe what they say. Take into account misinterpretations that you may be making. So, how do we use our knowledge of nonverbal characteristics to our advantage? We need to increase our awareness and sensitivity. Slow the communication and process more nonverbals on a conscious level. When you catch yourself going with a gut feeling, analyze what is actually causing that feeling. And when you are confused, use perception checks. Present your interpretation to the other person to see if it is accurate or if you misinterpreted the incident. The more you practice, the more it becomes second nature. Do not let your subconscious go on autopilot with nonverbals. Take control and watch your communication interactions improve.